Hello and welcome to the Perth Gaming Crew Show. My name is John, and today we have back with us again Johnny for our Switch exclusives part 2. Johnny, fantastic to have you back. Thanks again for coming on the show. How are you?
I'm great, John. It's great to be back talking to the viewers of Perth and beyond about all things that we love about Nintendo Switch gaming exclusives. And as you know, we found last time six Switch exclusive titles just didn't quite do the system justice, especially as it's going sort of at its peak at the moment. I think you'd probably agree.
Absolutely. The Switch have about 7 years in. There are fantastic exclusives that have been released each year. The people of Perth, as demanding as they are, the people of Perth and beyond, wanted a follow-up episode and they've asked for it. So we've got 6 more to cover. Just before we go on to that, first of all, it is Black Friday, Cyber Monday coming up. So a lot of games that we're going to mention today, and we're not affiliated with any companies, but they're on sales if you want to check them out. So it's a good time to be a gamer, let alone a Switch player. The 6 games we covered last time is about 3 or 4 episodes ago. For those of you who want to go check that one out. So we haven't missed, and we're not necessarily saying these are the best ones and only ones, but these are the ones that we just love the most. So on Johnny's end, we had the Mario 35, which is come and gone, unfortunately. Hopefully that comes back in the future.
You can't get that on Black Friday this year, unfortunately.
No, it's gone. It's out. It's kind of like the Mario HD package that came and went.
Yeah.
But Johnny did talk about Ring Fit Adventure, which is still very much available. You got to get the peripherals for that one too. And also Super Smash Brothers, which we also did a special deep dive on as well earlier in this program. And I covered Metroid Dread. What did I also cover? I think I covered. Oh, what did I cover?
The Shin Megami
Yeah,
Tensei, was it 5?
Shin
Yeah,
Megami Tensei 5. How can I forget? And Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze. So those were
of
our
course.
first 6. No mention of like traditional Mario games or traditional Zelda games. We'll see what today brings. But let's kick it off because we are definitely starting that way today. Johnny, what is your first pick out of the Switch exclusives that you've been playing?
So here is a game that's just come out of the gate, absolutely swinging. Super Mario Brothers Wonder, just released a couple of weeks ago. It's as you can see from the visuals, it's a really dynamic, explosive 2D platformer. It kind of brings the formula from all the way back in the original 2D Mario, and I think it's kind of perfected the formula with a whole lot of new bells and whistles, particularly the addition of the wonder effects of the wonder flower, which sends you into this kind of fantastical version of the game where everything is kind of wacky and out there. All kind of crazy stuff like the pipes, as you can see, pipes start to move, and although even the base gameplay is a whole lot of fun, it just adds this whole other addition to the gameplay. Then there's also, of course, Mario is known for all his different suits, like his raccoon suit and frog suits. This edition of in the Mario series just takes it one step further, where Mario is no longer content to just wear animal suits. He needs to become the animal in question, and now he can transform into an elephant. As you do, of course, you just why
Why not?
not?
It is. It's like this stuff happens. Why not?
Yeah. So with
Yeah.
Mario games, it is one of those games where you shouldn't spend too long thinking about what's going on because it's pretty wacky and out there, and it's always kind of been like that. Like the concept of a guy breaking bricks with his fists and then taking mushrooms to become larger and flowers to shoot fireballs. It's all pretty out there, even the base concept. But Wonder is kind of the perfection of all that in my view, and I think even there's one thing about Mario Wonder that makes it all worth it. Mario Wonder has finally answered the question of why do the Goombas hurt Mario or kill Mario, and we know now from Mario Wonder it's because they bite. They've added the animation of the
And they've
Goombas
actually done the
actually.
attack animations in.
There's an animation now, then there's lots of great, very amusing Goomba animations. Like when you first come across them, they're sort of napping, and they got a little sort of booger bubble kind of animation. But if you wake up a Goomba, it will bite. So that's something like a 35-year-old plus mystery solved. So Mario Wonder's worth it just for that. So maybe.
Nice. Love it. Johnny, there's quite, this game has just come out, and a lot of people have been looking forward to the new 2D Mario, particularly with the new Super Mario Deluxe brand that was originally on the Wii U and then ported to the Switch, with some new bells and whistles added. There are a few Mario games that have come out. There's Odyssey, there's 3D Super Mario 3D World, there's 2D Mario Maker, the second one, and the one I mentioned before. Why this game? Like, why did you pick this out of all the Mario games for your top three today? Is it
Look,
really that different and special compared to the other ones, or?
I think it is like it I think so. With some of the more recent 2D Mario entries, I think Nintendo's had a tendency to play things quite safe. It hasn't really, like, other than sort of some visual polish, you wouldn't argue that there's much more to it than there was in, say, like the original Mario games from the NES, except a bit of visual polish. Whereas um, this is really like a next level in terms of creativeness and introducing new dynamics. Um, and you get into it right from the get go, like in like your first or second stage that you come across, you're like doing things like going into the background and doing all the dynamics are brought into the game really quickly, so you don't have to be like 3/4 of the game before some of the really interesting dynamics that kick in.
Mm.
Um, um, Obviously, some of the it could kind of probably comes down to a little bit of preference, whether your preference is 3D Mario or if it's the 2D platforming style. So if you're more of if the 3D Mario is your thing, so going back to like Mario 64 and the thing, you might consider Super Mario Odyssey as your Mario of choice if that's your style of Mario. But if
Mhm.
you're a 2D platforming aficionado, very much like I consider myself, then Mario Wonder is going to be your cup of tea for sure.
Yeah, nice. It looks. I haven't picked it up and played it yet, but it looks really beautiful, and I can see the Wonder Seeds kind of changing the gameplay.
Yeah,
Um,
and
oh, yeah.
I gotta say how much fun the multiplayer is. I've
Yes.
had people over and done, I think we had 3-player multiplayer. Um, it just adds to the elements. Just adds that extra element of chaos.
Yep.
And I think I might have been telling you the story beforehand about having a mutual friend of ours over. He hadn't realized that he'd picked one of the characters that have a bit of a buff and they can't be killed by the Goombas and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And so he was going through it in that sort of mode, which is clearly aimed at younger players. But because he'd picked Yoshi, of course, we had to, at every opportunity, take our opportunity to ride Yoshi through the stages,
That's what
much,
Yoshi's for. That's what the
much,
original Yoshi did.
much to his chagrin. But I know the multiplayer is great fun. I really want to try and up the numbers to see how it plays with a few more, because it was quite good fun as just even just with 3.
Nice. And I do have to ask, do you have a favorite power? I saw there's like bubble blowing, there's the elephant. I think there's a drill power, and I think some of the traditional powers like the fire flower in there or mushroom. Yeah, do you have a favorite power from your experience?
I got to admit, in the last little while, I've enjoyed just kind of sort of navigating towards the sort of more traditional power ups and playing it playing it in that fashion, just because I
Hmm.
think it's like a muscle memory kind of thing. I've kind of
Yeah,
want
familiarity,
to
kind of like I
want,
know how this
want,
works.
as much as the elephant and stuff are a great laugh. I just I just have this tendency to want to go for the fire flowers and the power up stars. But I think over time I'll start to enjoy the new power ups and features even more.
Awesome. No, that's great. I've got my eye on the bubble, like the bubble blowing attack. Like I think the elephant looks great, and I've seen the elephant transformations for the characters, too adorable. But I was like, oh, the
Yeah,
bubble one just looks. I don't know how fun it is, but it just looks very Mario-y, you know.
yeah,
Really like that. Really dig it. Okay, well that's Mario Wonder. I mean, it's doing bananas as sales. Great reviews everywhere. Something for everyone. Family friendly. What a great game to start with.
and it's significant. It's also significant in it in terms of the voice acting. It's the first, I believe, it's the first Mario entry without the services of Charles Martinet as
It
doing
is.
the.
It is
So,
correct.
so you do notice it. It's very subtle. Like you have to be
Okay.
listening in for it. But some of the Yahoos and things like that are a little bit have a different tone because obviously it's a new voice actor. So that's kind of it's an interesting milestone in the Mario um, in the Mario timeline of a bit of a change and significant
Mhm.
in that way as well.
Yeah, and I guess that's the thing we've seen with the Mario movie. The voiceovers for that movie change as well, so it's kind of bringing Mario to a new audience, but then old audiences sounds like it was still enjoyable. It didn't tip the game too badly or anything.
No, no one needs to worry. They haven't tried to crisp Pratify Mario in this game at all, so no one needs to be alarmed.
Excellent, excellent. Yeah, well, that's Mario Wonder. It's a brilliant game. We might have to do a deep dive on it, or even Mario games in general. There's just so many to cover. But keeping on the theme of wacky, so the next one was my pick. So this is part of a trilogy, and I really struggled which game to pick overall out of the three. For those, it's a bit of a quieter, less known well game. They don't sell as well. They sell about 1 million. And the first game is actually on the other platforms, but the second game is an exclusive to Switch, ported from the Wii U originally with up-res graphics, and then Bayonetta 3 came out, I think it was just last year. I've played all three. I love all three. I had to pick Bayonetta. You know, there's so many great games out there like the Splatoon series or Animal Crossing. But for me, I've always been that, and I've mentioned this on the show before, I kind of go for the B tier, C tier kind of Nintendo games and always have. And Bayonetta just appeals to me because it's in that group, but it is just a superb series. Pick up and play has that kind of pick up and play quality like Mario does. So essentially, it's like a third person character action game in the vein of games like Devil May Cry. Um, what else? The like the ninja kind of games from Koei Tecmo. It's probably the best in its class. It's the best that I've played. It looks very chaotic. So you play as Bayonetta herself, who's this witch, an umbral witch, and she's kind of caught between like a war between heaven and hell. And you end up fighting angels and demons who are not traditional, like in that traditional sense that we understand them. Um, but it's a bucket load of fun. You can see her kicking this wheel of doom on a demon and spinning him around. But it's the kind of game that it feels like you're on a roller coaster and it just goes wilder and wackier and crazier. But you do have a degree of control that you don't expect. So, you know, I've seen people talk about this game or look at this game and go, gee, there's so much going on. Like the fighting looks complex, it looks chaotic, but it doesn't actually feel that way. A key mechanic with this game is the ability to slow time. So you'll be punching, kicking, shooting, and then you slow time, and it just looks amazing. It kind of does this blurred purple effect, and you hear this clock slow down in the background, and you get all your combos and that kind of thing in. It's probably one of the best feeling games I've ever played. It's not. It's definitely not the best looking game, and the story is all over the shop. It's totally ridiculous, and it kind of makes all these references to cult classics. But in terms of feeling, like I've played through the first and second about 3 times, and I've played the third one once. My pick specifically is the second one. I find it just balances that sense of fluidity and quality, whereas the third one I felt was a bit overstuffed with too many concepts, too many fighting styles, too many characters. And I didn't enjoy the enemy selection as much, which was like this kind of new Greek cyber kind of enemy that came in. With Bayonetta 2, probably the standout thing for this game in this series that is it's a fighting game with a little bit of action adventure elements. It moves very quickly, but the showpiece and what makes it really stand out compared to other Nintendo games and games and other consoles is that it just does superb boss fights, just absolutely brilliant boss fights. So, for example, in the second Bayonetta game, there's a scene where you're Bayonetta, you're riding this big block of a building on a tidal wave at full speed, and you're getting attacked by this serpent that jumps at you and jumps around you. And the level evolves, and suddenly you're going down a whirlpool rather than sort of this wave up in the sky. As you're fighting it, it's like chomping at you, and then later that will evolve again into like a flying scene in the sky where you're flying on these angel wings you've got yourself, or this as part of a demon that Bayonetta is like can control, and you're flying at top speed fighting this bizarre creature again. Here's part of the footage there just for a split second. And the creativity in this game, the character designs, the boss design, I've very rarely seen anything of that class. God of War's right up there too for me personally, but this is probably a bit faster, has a bit of an arcadey, bright, shiny feel to it, and it just feels so good. I love the way it feels. I can't, for me, the best games are the ones that feel great with the moment-to-moment gameplay, and this is that. Johnny, have you heard about the Bayonetta series, or you played Bayonetta 2 in particular?
I was obviously, know of the Bayonetta series, and it's a significant, IP in the Nintendo sphere. My main familiarity of Bayonetta is through Smash Brothers, of course, as you might
Yes.
not be too
Oh,
surprised.
she's very good in that. She's so well done
Yeah,
in that. And there's a level in
yeah,
that to Bayonetta. I should just say I love that level too. It's perfectly Bayonetta.
yeah. No, and I think Bayonetta works really well, weaves into Smash Brothers Ultimate really nicely, actually. So yeah, I was interested. That's really interesting that you found the second entry in the series to be kind of
Mm.
almost like peak Bayonetta.
Mm.
They probably hadn't the third. Maybe they hadn't quite nailed it or tried to reach too far. Maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, the graphics, it does push the Switch to its limits, and it looks like that, whereas the second doesn't.
Mm.
It brings too much on constantly, I think, for new players. And look, you can choose the weapons, and it's a great game in its own right. But I think for first time players, and for me particularly, the action is purest in that second game, particularly with the boss fights. Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, no, it's good. So yeah, Bayonetta 2, probably the best of the series. But if we take a bit of a left turn from a faster game to a slower game, we do have Johnny's next pick. This one surprised me that it was a pick for you, so I'm really keen to hear why above all the games you picked this and what you really like about it.
Yeah, I know. Look, this is I know it's a little bit. It's definitely a left turn. It's a bit different from some of the other titles we've been talking about. This is I think this is just an adorable game from kind of the first couple of years of the Switch. I think it released 2019. Um, Back in the day, one of my favorite Super Nintendo games was Yoshi's Island. I think it was actually technically it was Super Mario World 2 Yoshi's
Yeah,
Island, but Mario kind of just is riding on Yoshi's back the whole game. So doesn't it's technically a Mario game, but really it's the start of the Yoshi series. And this title from 2019 kind of brought the best parts of that Super Nintendo Yoshi title into the modern era. But it's quite it's got quite an adorable art style. It's so Yoshi's cruising around in what looks to be like somebody's crafternoon, or quite an expansive crafternoon. All the settings are kind of built from like milk containers and that sort of thing.
Mm.
And the reason this is on my list, there's a little bit of there's a bit of a nostalgia element. It's the first game I played with my daughter when she was about 5 or 6 year old,
Ah, okay, yeah,
and it
great
was
game for playing with kids.
it's a game that's definitely probably got a younger audience in mind. There's no bones about that. But I had so much fun with this. I think we for what's a fairly short, not a very long game. We probably put about 30 hours into Yoshi's Crafted World and going through all the stages. We did multiple playthroughs. It's got a mode to be even more friendly to kids. It's called Wing Mode. Um,
Okay.
but I was, especially at that point in time, I wanted to instill a 1980s gamer ethic into my daughter, and I said, look, we're not going to go easy mode because it's already, there's
Mhm.
the platforming is, you can do it, and it was probably frustrating at first, but it didn't actually take very long to kind of get the hang of it, and it was a great fun co-op game that we got to play together. And as my daughter's kind of moved on to the kind of tablet gaming and being into like Roblox and stuff, I have a bit of nostalgia for the sort of younger years when she was just wanted to play Yoshi's Crafted World with her dad.
Oh.
So it's kind of fun for that. But I actually enjoyed it as on its own right, in its own right. And of course, as is the case generally with the Yoshi's Island game, it's you're setting out to foil a scheme by usually Bowser Jr. and Kamek, and they're sort of like very much the kind of goofy Saturday morning cartoon villains that you'd expect in this game, as they are in other entries, and that's a lot of fun and it's very amusing. Yeah, fun for all ages is the best way to describe it. And I just love the egg trying to perfect your egg shooting game is like one of the what's generally a quite easy game, like it's an easy game to play, difficult to master is the way I'd describe it.
Yeah, like no, that's a perfect kind of description. I know this game got a little bit of criticism for being too easy, but I think it's aimed more at a family friendly audience, and that's the
Definitely.
design of Yoshi to have that floaty jump, and not as not all the gaps. It's just a lot. You're dying a lot less. You're interacting a bit more. It's bit less intimidating, and you can play with someone else and get along a bit easier. It kind of works really well that way. I'm sure, no doubt, your daughter will remember those memories forever. Playing Yoshi with Dad. What I did want to ask you is, this is the only Yoshi game we've seen on the Switch, which is a bit unusual, I think, because the Switch has been out for so long. There is a demo available for people who do want to try before they buy, because it might not be for everyone, but some people love it, like you do, Johnny. Do you feel like the absence of a second Yoshi game, or do you think like it's a one and done, or it's going to come back, or the franchise is too small? Do you have any thoughts about where Yoshi is at in terms of his appearance on the Switch in the future?
Yeah, look, I thought that's kind of interesting that
Mm.
it didn't really take off, and that could be because they might have made it a little bit too easy, and so maybe that limited its potential. Also, it's very much a spiritual successor to Yoshi's Woolly World, which was a
On the
Wii
Wii
U
U.
title, and
Mm.
of course, a lot of games that only released on the Wii U, um, they didn't get as widely played. Um,
Mm.
so that might have something to do with the fact that there hasn't been another Yoshi game. I'm hopeful that Yoshi gets more love on the next gen in the next gen of Nintendo hardware.
Mm.
Because it's yeah, it takes me right back to a lot of the fun I had playing the Yoshi's Island game on the Super Nintendo back in the
Mm.
day.
Yeah, no, totally agree. And it's interesting that you mentioned Woolly World because I remember that game, and I think this game was made generally with the same game engine. A lot of the
Yeah,
mechanics and the feel of it's very similar, but it
mm,
expands the material, so to speak.
yeah,
I'm surprised they didn't port across Woolly World because I think that would have been, just a quick, easy win for them, and they could have sold 500,000 or 1,000,000 units. There'd be people out there be interested in playing it with the
it
gap
might.
between that game and this one.
Yeah, it might be
Yeah,
one of the last Wii U titles not to be ported to the
yeah,
Switch.
yeah. I think so. I think so. And I've always thought, why they just bring that out? And maybe they'll bring it out next year because they've got
Yeah,
a bit of a focus on Mario and Yoshi has been
yeah.
absent. Barring that, I was actually playing Super Mario World 2 Yoshi's Island recently on my SNES Mini Classic and
Oh,
enjoying
yeah.
that because I never played that when I was younger. So I'm experiencing that for the first time and quite like it. And I think I can see them remaking that much like they've done with Mario
Mm,
RPG, and it would still have a lot of value to nostalgic gamers and new audiences because a lot of the mechanics carry across. They can always do some
yeah.
quality of life improvements. So interesting. Yoshi's Crafted World. Okay, so the next one we have is also because I just love my smaller games that no one knows about, but I love and I always want to kind of promote them. Weirdly, you wouldn't think that Marvel need promoting and that a Marvel game would be small. I don't know if you've seen this one before, Johnny, but when this was announced, I was like, I'm so glad I bought a Nintendo Switch. First of all, this is Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3. I played the first two on the Xbox 360 back in the day, and then the third game just disappeared, and people were like, "Where is it? Will it ever come?" And then when it was announced for Nintendo Switch on their new kind of underpowered platform, such a mainstream game, with all the Marvel movies, and this came out shortly after the whole Thanos Infinity Snap time, when the series was wrapping up, it was a shock. It was like, this is going to Nintendo, but for me, it was like wonderful. And what they've done here is absolutely fantastic. So I am a Marvel fan. This is an absolute smorgasbord of, if you have any character that you enjoy, you can probably play as them. It's a top-down action RPG. It looks a bit like Diablo, but it's less grindy, I would say. There's more variety in the gameplay, and certainly all the characters are quite different. So, for example, you might have Miles Morales Spider-Man can shoot electricity webs on the ground that freeze, like shock enemies that way, whereas the traditional Spider-Man might shoot a little spider seeker that shoots webs in the distance and wraps them up in the distance and feels quite different, including even with their basic attacks. I love this game. This is definitely one of my favorite Switch games of all time. I really like the way it looks. Like it's the old comic book graphic style. It's not going to look like, Marvel Spider-Man on the PlayStation, and it's not aiming to do that. It was developed by Koei Tecmo, who also did a couple of other games like the Fire Emblem and Hyrule Warriors games. And I think they've done a really masterful job here. I mentioned earlier that it's a bit of a smorgasbord for Marvel fans. So, yeah, if you can think of any character like Miss Marvel or Black Panther, they're all here. They're pretty much all here, and every level is picked from one of the main universes. So you'll go across like Thor's universe with the Rainbow Bridge. There's the raft from Spider-Man with all of the Sinister Six villains and bosses in there. I probably like the X Mansion the most because X Men is probably my favorite franchise, and you can play as like Wolverine, but you can also play as like Psylocke, Jean Grey, Colossus. Oh, just a whole heap of X Men. It's fantastic, and there's some nods to the older games. The gameplay itself is actually really varied. As you can see, there's a few different camera angles that take place. So it's traditionally like a brawler, like the old beat 'em ups. But the camera might change place to give you a different perspective and feel for the game. So you might be dodging searchlights, and then in the next scene, you might be running away from lightning or a giant laser beam that one of the bosses is shooting at you. And then the next scene, you might be taking on a group of sentinels. It keeps the gameplay really fresh. It's full of Easter eggs and references for Marvel fans. It's got some good voice acting and some really great cutscenes. To me, this is probably one of the most underappreciated games, and I can't believe I'm doing it for Marvel because there's about 1,000 Marvel TV shows out there. And a lot of people have Marvel fatigue, myself included, in terms of the shows. But in terms of the game, this is fantastic, single player and multiplayer. It's just, if it was on the other consoles, I think a lot of people would be picking it up. Johnny, did you see this one when it came out in the early days of the Switch?
I I, um I did see it come out, and I definitely remember. I definitely remember playing some of the predecessors on older
Oh
consoles,
yeah,
like
yep,
the Marvel games on the Wii, which were actually a lot of fun. They had their rough edges, of course, because
yeah.
the limitations of that system. Um, but this is quite impressive in a way. It's doing something that the Marvel Cinematic Universe hasn't quite done yet. It's brought in the X-Men, as you pointed out,
Mm,
into
mm.
the fold,
Can I
which
just say on that? I think I could not have forgiven them if they didn't, because they were so integral to the previous games, and there was a bit of like, oh, they're going to be in there, they have to be, and then you saw Wolverine and thought, done, perfect, bought, sold, done, yeah, yep.
yeah, I was actually quite looking forward to hearing you talk about this entry because although I haven't played this game, have been on a bit of an MCU kick of late. I
Oh yeah,
jumped in. I didn't want to drown myself in the entire MCU, but I thought I'll do a chunk of it. I'll do everything between Guardians of Galaxy Volume 1 and Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3,
that's a
and
lot. That is a
that's a si-
lot.
that's a
That is a
sizable chunk. I don't do things by halves, but and that was a sort of more realistic way to cut the Marvel pie.
yep.
But yeah, no, I like that I've got a soft spot for the Guardians.
Hmm.
They're kind of they're there's very sort of kind of comedic relief of the Marvel universe, and I see they get a little bit of representation in this one too, by the looks of it.
They do, yeah. They get a few characters, all the main ones, like the main 4 or 5 that you know. Plus, the opening level is their level. It starts with them and it follows them quite a bit. So yeah, there's you'd definitely be satisfied as a fan. Yeah. I'll go ahead, Johnny. Sorry.
I was just going to say, is this so this has been out for a while now. So is this one you've put a lot of hours into?
Yeah, it's funny you asked that. So I've put about 60 or 70 hours into it. I've played it through a
Wow.
few times.
Yeah. Wow.
And there was a DLC that came out, and the first DLC brought in some of the kind of edgier characters like Blade, the Punisher. Who's the vampire? I forget his name now from the Spider-Man universe. So I was like, yes, yeah, I want that. And then they brought in the Fantastic Four after that with its whole new story mode and bosses. So
Cool.
it's just such a quality game. Like one of my favorite characters, for example, is the Punisher, and even his light attacks are just a machine gun. And then, yeah, you're just shooting your machine gun, and then he whips out a shotgun to finish people off. And then he has a rocket launcher as a heavy attack. And then the
Of
actual
course it
special
does. Of
moves,
course.
as you do. And of course, you can get all the gear, all the fan gear. So he has like X-Men Apocalypse, like gear on, so it's just heaven for me. It's like, oh, you've just hit the mark. Blade does his, I don't know if you remember the old Blade movie from, I think it's the 90s with Wesley Snipes. He does his little signature sword flip. He does it in this game too. Like they've actually made the effort to put in all those little touches. It's kind of, and again, the hours I've put into it, because sometimes these like top-down action RPGs can feel samey or grindy, but it really doesn't. It mixes up the gameplay so much, and you play a few characters and go, "Oh, now I want to go play Venom. How does he feel? I want to play Miss Marvel. Oh, she's got all the beam attacks I expect. You name them, they're in there. Scarlet Witch, well, everyone's in there. So it's just, yeah, it's such a great game, and it still holds its quality. And I think if it was released now, it probably would have sold more in some ways. Now the Switch has got a bigger user base and is more established, but could rant on about it forever, but we're not here to rant on about that forever. We're up to Johnny's third and final game. Now, we have been told off by the people of Perth and beyond for not talking about the little man in his green hat, but the time has come. We might even talk about a Zelda game for once on a Switch exclusives episode. Johnny, what is your third and
um,
final game and why?
you know, well, the people of Perth have demanded a Zelda tragic to come in and
They've tried it as.
Yeah, you've been chided for your views on. No. I think it's
No one
fine.
else is watching.
I think everyone's got different different genres that they like, but look, I felt I really struggled to not include this game in my picks because it is so polished. I mean, in many respects, it's more of the same what we got from Breath of the Wild, but it just adds so much more. Um, it's that expanse, um, possibly over expansive open world 3D Zelda. Um, Obviously, it's great in that it sort of picks up the story straight off the back of Breath of the Wild, and that's where you kind of have your tutorial moment, which Zelda games, especially 3D Zelda games, are known for, and you get your kind of story explanation for why Link starts off with 3 hearts at the start of every game, which is in this case they kind of they go under Hyrule Castle at the start of the game, and that's where you have your first encounter with the game's antagonists, which is the incarnation of Ganon. In this case, it's the Ganondorf incarnation that's come back. I'll try not to go into too many details because it's still a fairly new game, and even for myself, I feel like I've only really scratched the surface with this game. No pun intended. But have only um, being this is a real time sink, and I'm very happy that I've got taken quite a bit of time off work in the new year, and one of my intentions is just to stay out of the heat and enjoy some time with Tears of the Kingdom and do that kind of exploration because I really like a bit like Mario Wonder. I feel like this is the perfection of a formula that Nintendo started to craft in the 80s. I feel this kind of encapsulates a lot of the mood of that first Legend of Zelda game on the NES. It, all that I think maybe all that it's missing is someone at the beginning of the game to tell you it's dangerous. It's dangerous to go alone. Um,
Mm.
so it's kind of captures that vibe of the original Zelda really well. But just so much to do in the game aside from the main storyline.
Mm.
Um, you kind of can't go past it. I think and obviously it's very likely to be in the frame for kind of game of the year, game of 2023,
Mm.
which is yeah, kind of self-explanatory. Um, yeah, yeah. This is going to be in my future quite a bit over the next couple of weeks, which I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, like I remember when Breath of the Wild came out, people just played that game for years, like
Mm,
constantly discovering new things, and it brought new players in years onwards. Like it's not just something that's aged badly. It's like you can go play it now and have a great time. Um, Johnny, I know you're a long term Zelda fan. You've played a lot of the Zelda games, and on the Switch in particular, we have Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, Link's Awakening, Zelda Skyward Sword, and then there's even there was the
excuse me.
music one. I think it's Cadence of Hyrule, which is an indie
Cadence
game.
Hyrule, Cadence Hyrule is great fun.
Yeah. So for you, why pick this of all the Zelda games, and what's different about this game compared to Breath of the Wild that makes you feel like it is, was special to you?
I think, well, this game, I guess I think there's just a bit more polish on what was there in Breath of the Wild.
Hmm.
And keeping in mind, um, it was I probably kept Breath of the Wild off my list of picks today, really on a
Mm.
technicality in that it actually didn't release exclusively for the Switch. It was a game that
Mm,
released simultaneously on the Wii U and the Switch, and
mm.
whereas I think this title is trying to kind of make the most of the Switch hardware. It
So
doesn't
you
do.
notice that difference, do you mean? Like, do you think that expansive world of the
I
sky?
The sky element is one part of
Yeah.
it. It's also there's a bit more, kind of a bit more. I think a bit more thought has
Mm,
been built into kind of the mechanics of the game, and there's a whole crafting element that's been
mm.
introduced, and it's kind of there to be played with as much as you want, and it's you can spend an afternoon going on YouTube and seeing all the crazy stuff people are building in Tears of the
Yeah,
Kingdom,
all the
all,
airplanes and
all the
animals and rocket
airplanes,
ships
like,
and all that stuff.
and it's um, but I find to an extent you can kind of do as much of that as you sort of need to, and you don't necessarily have to sort of go overboard on that stuff. But yeah, there's just so much going on. We got the added dimension of the sky, and that's where you kind of spend the first hour or so of the game, kind of you know working through that process to get back down to the surface. Yeah, I just think it's perfected what was already really really amazing in Breath of the Wild. And there's like, as you say, there's lots of Zelda on the Switch now that you can access. You can access a lot of um, the games from the Nintendo and Super Nintendo now on the Switch.
Hmm.
They recently re-released Skyward Sword for the Switch, which is great fun.
Yeah, I'm
I have
playing that through at the moment, actually.
I have a
Yeah.
soft spot. I have a soft spot for Skyward Sword. I know it's not people's favorite Zelda entry, or even like for 3D entries. It's probably got a little bit of flack because it's got a kind of lighter tone
Hmm.
to other entries from that Wii era. But yeah, no, I think I think they've kind of blown it out of the water with this entry, and
Hmm.
yeah, waiting to see. I mean, I still got so much of the main game to get through, but so
Hmm.
I don't want them to rush DLC if there is DLC in the pipeline, which I'm sure there is.
Hmm.
But yeah, it's you definitely a lot of bang for your buck with this one. There's so much going on,
Hmm.
and yeah, you certainly you won't be short on things to do. Um, but yeah, I'm quite happy that I've cleared the decks for January to have a bit of time with Tears of the Kingdom.
Yeah, I'm slightly jealous. You need that time with these kind of games, these kind of big sandbox RPGs to like appreciate it and spend that time in that world and make the most of it and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, that's awesome. I know I've mentioned on the show before. I've played a little bit of Breath of the Wild, but it wasn't for me. I haven't started this because I didn't go through Breath of the Wild, but I have recently purchased Skyward Sword quite deliberately because I am a bit time poor and I wanted to go through a more focused experience. I've only played about 3 4 hours, but I really like it. It reminds me of my favorite Zelda game, which is the Wind Waker. So I feel like, I'm getting a bit of that DNA again from back then.
Mm,
Um, yeah.
yeah, Wind Waker's an amazing game. Yeah, and Skyward Sword's got a little bit probably more in common with Wind Waker than Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom. That's for sure.
Yeah, see, that's what I'm thinking. Like maybe go through that, and then if I do ever come across those really big chunks of time where I can immerse myself in, which I'd love to have, but I don't have, and then go,
Yeah,
okay, it's time to finally play Breath of the Wild. Once it
yeah,
gets re-released as a remastered edition on the Super Nintendo Switch or whatever's next in
yeah.
4K or whatever.
These games are such time sinks. Like full disclosure, I haven't even, I've gotten like three-quarters of the way through Breath of the Wild, haven't completed it, and I've already sunk at least 100 hours into
That's
it.
incredible to me. That's
Uh,
incredible.
and the problem, and that's because and this happens in Tears of the Kingdom too. You go, oh,
Hmm.
that hill looks interesting. I'm going to scale that hill for uh, who knows why. It's such a it's just the curiosity element, and that's what
Yeah.
I feel like they've it's almost like the original Legend of Zelda from the 80s was like proof of concept, and this is what they could do back then with the hardware they had available, and over time they've
Mm.
just perfected that, and 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 this is where it's at now, and it's like, yeah, but it's the core concept of exploration and kind of the wonder of the natural world. I mean, it's well known now that Shigeru Miyamoto's inspiration for the original The Legend of Zelda was his childhood, where he just wander in nature, and you've seen those elements replicated through the Zelda series over time, and
Mm.
these games very much encapsulate that in a really high octane, fantastical manner.
Yeah, it's like the vision's been achieved finally. And I think this game and Breath of the Wild, like you mentioned, they're going to have that everlasting quality. Yeah, people play them for 20 years and look back at them as go, oh, yeah, 20 years ago we had the best of the best, I'd say. Well, we are running out of time, but we do have one more game to cover. And this is my last pick of the six. A bit more diversity in the mix. Again, it's probably my top three overall. I did want to put in the original list, but there's just so many games to talk about, and I hadn't been playing it at the time. So what we're looking at here, for those of you who don't know, is Fire Emblem Three Houses, which was the first Fire Emblem game, apart from the Warriors spin-off, to come out on the Switch. Since then, we've had Engage, which I think came out in January this year, and it's a bit different. Um, this is my pick for so many reasons.
And
I
John,
really,
I was and
huh,
I was wondering. I thought John hasn't mentioned Fire Emblem yet, and no, if listeners of Perth and Beyond have watched the show for long, know how big of a Fire Emblem fan, and it's only just been mentioned now.
I know, I know. I can't do it justice. I want to do a special on it. And it's funny, I thought about talking about it in the first time we did this, the first part, but there were just other games I was playing that were a bit more current to me that I really wanted to cover. But it's time for Fire Emblem, finishing a banger. So, yeah, look, for those of you who don't know, Fire Emblem series is a long standing Nintendo series, like many of the other series, like the Yoshi games or the Kirby games, Mario, Zelda. Again, it's in that kind of B, C tier, depending on what people's preferences are, and it's not for everyone. Certainly, it's for me, not just because it's in those tiers, but because these kind of games just greatly appeal to me. Essentially, it's a tactical Japanese role playing game, and you take on the role of Byleth, who can be female or male. And from there, you're a mercenary or the son or daughter of a mercenary, and you get pulled into this world. The world's called Fodlan, and eventually you'll have to align yourself with one of three houses: the Golden Deer, the Blue Lions, or the Black Eagles. And it's a really interesting game because it's not what you would see in a lot of tactical games where they can be a bit shallow and the characters aren't very well developed and it's all about strategy, which turns a lot of people off. But it has that great strategy aspect to it, which I really like. Next to that, or part of that, is like the anime melodrama. So if you're an anime fan at all, this game would do it for you. You can date. There's people like just going nuts at each other, and there's backstabbing. There's heroism. The concepts are just all there, and there's a little bit more meat to the story. Like it's not just that light, everyone's friendly and bubbly, good versus evil. You pick a side, and then your side, even your soldiers will express regret when they kill someone on the battlefield, or you're offing a former classmate. This game might seem a bit complex to some people. So you have the actual battles themselves, and then you have the school element, which has just often been described as Harry Potter, where you're doing all these activities like fishing or classroom, like different subjects, teaching subjects, very simplistic mini games built into that side of things. There's tea parties, which sounds, whether you're into that or not, you don't have to do it. I think it was great. But the story, the characters, and the world really sucks you in. And I think it's kind of, I love the Netflix Castlevania series. And I kind of think when I look at this, I'll be like, oh, they do really well with the streaming TV series for this game. It just feels great to play. I've played through two of the houses. So I've played through Blue Lions and the Golden Deer, which is a bit controversial because I know a lot of people are into Black Eagles. I will get around to Black Eagles, but the campaign's probably about 30 to 35 hours. And when you've played through once, you're like emotionally exhausted and you've just played a lot of game. You're just like, I need a break from Fire Emblem. I need to play Mario now to just like chill out, play some, stuff that's not too heavy and, just a bit nicer vibe to it. But yeah, if you want the complete epic fantasy game, and this is, there's so much value in this, much like the Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3 game. This is probably the best game on the Switch for that. I like the look of it more than Engage. I haven't played Engage. I've seen a bit of Engage, but this does a lot more for me. The story just sucks you in, and the characters do too. But Johnny, enough of me waffling on. You've heard about a little known game called Fire Emblem Three Houses?
Oh no, it's definitely aware of it. I think Fire Emblem, particularly this entry into Fire Emblem, falls into that category of games that I keep a bit of distance from it just because I know I'll probably love it too much, and then I'll have no time available for anything else. So because it definitely looks like it would be quite addictive. In terms of it looks like the action is quite engaging, and I do like the anime style for sure. So it's one of those games that look sort of too good that I have to kind of keep my distance from to because I've got some Zelda games to get through.
You've got Breath of the
Don't
Wild to finish, and Tears of the Kingdom now, and when we do part 3, we'll see what comes up there. There's a lot of games out there.
Yeah,
Excellent.
no, but I can see the appeal, and definitely enjoy hearing you talk about your passion for Fire Emblem. I can tell it's a game that you really have a lot of love for, and that's I think that's awesome.
Yeah, no, look, it is. I love this game. I'm really keen on the third playthrough when I get to that point. Although I've put 2 playthroughs into this game already, so it's like, all right, I have seen most of everything. What I can say though is the 3 different houses. They feel fresh each time. So you see different sides of the stories. It's not just like really bland units and then a couple of minor differences. Like you pick your house, you commit to it, and then you're like, oh, I need to know what happened on the other side. It's definitely like that. And we did cover Smash Brothers, and we mentioned a few times, Byleth is a character in Smash Brothers. Very well done. Fire Emblem Three Houses level is very cool. I know a lot of people hated on it because they're like, oh, another sword fighter. I was like, and there's like 50 Fire Emblem characters. Okay, I get that. But this is Three Houses, man. Like, this is, when I see this going into Smash, I was like, yeah, I'm time to come back. But look, that's all we have time for today. Johnny, it's been excuse the pun, wonderful having you on the show again. What do you think about part 3? Do you think the people of Perth and beyond do want to see part 3?
Well, look, maybe that's something we keep up our sleeve for the new year, and let's see what how the Switch runs through to the end of its generation, and see what bangers are gonna feature in that run home to whatever the Switch successor looks like.
Absolutely. Yeah, my money's still on it coming out at the end of next year or the following year. But in terms of exclusives, there's so many franchises like we haven't even covered. Pikmin, the Metroid Prime game, the Splatoon series 2 and 3, Switch Sports. There is a whole raft of games. So people of Perth and beyond, let us know your preferences. You can go to the website perthgamingcrew.com. We only have a couple of episodes left. Hope you've enjoyed today's episode. We certainly have. Johnny, thanks again for joining the show. Love having you on. But that's all from me now. And the Perth Gaming Crew show, over and out. See you later.